Hello. So I was doing a little bit of research myself on how to best write tests for my applications, and I came across this acronym first. And I started doing a little bit of research on it, and I thought, boy, this is really useful, and I don't understand why I'm just coming across it now. So, anyways, here's a breakdown of first and how it can help you write better tests for your code. So, the first, since this is an acronym, F for fast. So your tests need to be run very frequently, and this makes sense, right? You want to, if you're doing a continuous integration slash continuous deployment environment, especially, you're going to be running your unit tests as soon as you finish working on the code that you're working on, and before committing it, and then you would commit it, and then whatever CI tool you're using will then check out the code, run all the tests again, and if this takes 30 minutes, that's an hour right there, just between those two things. And if something goes wrong, God, debugging it and then running the tests again, and that's just a mess. And so if tests don't run fast, they won't get run often, and if tests don't get run often, they won't spot errors. Next, we have independent. So your tests should never depend on anything externally. They should be run in a void of sorts, right? There should be no external influence on them at all. So the tests, especially important that your test should never depend on another test completing. If you get into this whole mess, you'll run into a cascading waterfall of just failed tests after one fails. And that's never a good thing because while it is sort of useful that your tests will tell you, hey, something went wrong, it's a lot more useful if your tests tell you what is wrong, or at least narrow down the where something went wrong, rather than just telling you, hey, there's 10,000 errors and there you go. You'll never figure out what's wrong with that information. So the results should be the same no matter which tests we choose to run. What I mean by that is I should be able to pick and choose, okay, I want to run this test, and that test, and I want to ignore all the other ones. And I should get the exact same results with those tests that I do if I run the whole suite of tests together, or if I choose to just omit one from the tests. So nothing should, every single test should get its own fresh copy of the object to be tested, the function to be tested, yada yada yada. There should be no leftover between the tests that could pollute them. So those rules are very easily accomplished if we follow the basic structure of testing, which is arrange, act, and assert. So within any given test, you should have, I usually even just write a comment for arrange and act and assert and then put the code for each one underneath it. But you'll put all your code for arranging something. So that means that you're gonna set this variable, set that variable, change the internal state of your object a little bit, and then you'll act. So that's where like whatever you're testing, you'll call that right now. So if that's a method, you'll call that method. Then under assert, you're gonna assert that something is true. And that could be anything from, oh, I get back a list that's of size 1. Okay, there you go. Test. It either passes or it fails. There is no in between. It either is of size 1 or it isn't. Now, next we have repeatable. So, what we mean by repeatable is that your test should function the same in any environment. Now, if that environment is QA prod or your laptop on the bus, on the train, at the beach, it does not matter. Your test should always behave the exact same way because they should be um, working in a void. There is no external influence on them, right? That ties into a previous rule that we talked about. So if your tests depend on some sort of external environment, then you really need to rethink your tests because we need them quick and working anywhere. Now next we have self-validating. So we've kind of already touched on this, but your test should say true or false. Did it pass or did it fail? Do not do anything like making me look through a log of files and see like, oh, did it create that file? We have computer programs that can do these things. You should be validating if you want to see if the method that you called created a file, check to see if the file exists in the code and then send true if it did. Don't make me dig through this stuff and manually check it, because guess what? It's not going to get done and we're not going to catch an error because of it. Now, next, we have timely. So, this is the question of when is the best time to write tests? Well, if you follow the paradigm of test driven development, or TDD, you should be writing the tests before you write the code, which makes it easy, right? You would just write it first. But we don't all follow that line of thinking. Test-driven development works sometimes for me, but I'm gonna be honest with you. For the most part, I'm just tinkering, trying to see what works, and then after I figure out what works, I like to refactor and refine it. Um, I can do test-driven development if I know exactly what needs to be done, but that's not always the case, right? So, anyways, my thoughts on it is if I need to write the tests but I need to write the code first. I'm going to do it right away. I'm going to do it right away for two big reasons. Okay. First of all, I will know what my use cases are for writing that function or writing that class, and I'll know what I should be testing for, right? And second of all, since I have that code fresh in my mind, I'm not afraid to refactor it, because if it's a first pass through this code, it's probably not that great, and I need to take a minute to get things up to snuff. Some sometimes testing is best for just showing you what you need to refactor, because if it's hard to test, it's probably hard to read, and there's probably bugs hidden in there. So take the time to actually refactor. Don't just go through and test things. Just testing things does not help. All right, moving on. Thorough. I know there's two T's, but we'll go over that in a minute. So, being thorough does not mean measuring your success by lines slash statements covered. Okay. I don't care if you have 100% code coverage according to lines or statements. You could have tested literally nothing by doing that. Okay. Your measure of success needs to come from use cases that you've covered. Okay. So what this means is if you're making a sorting algorithm, right? And you need to make sure what does it do when the user wants to pass in when the user passes in something that's already sorted. Does it give you back the exact same array? Yes. Okay, cool. That is a valid use case, right? A user might pass in something that's already sorted and ask you to sort it. Now, what happens if you pass in an empty array? What should it give back? You got to think of these. Those would be more edge cases, but your valid use cases need to be tested as well. What this helps you with is if you go to refactor it. So let's pretend that you've made these tests and you're looking back at your code and you're thinking, man, I could write this a little bit better. Where are your assurances that what you're changing doesn't change fundamentally what this code does? Well, your tests are what give you those assurances, because you've written tests that have the exact use case that you expect somebody to be using your code for, and those are still green, they're still passing. Then that means that your refactor, you made everything look better and you didn't break anything, which is nice. All right. So now we're going to go through our first summary. Now, I know, like I said, there were two T's. I was looking around online and I saw some people were putting timely, some people were putting thorough, and very few people were putting both of them together, but I liked them both, so I figured, I'll just throw them both in there, right? So, doing a quick summary, fast. You can't let your tests take too long to run, otherwise they won't get ran. Then they've also got to be independent. So each test should not interfere with another test or require another test to run before it. Repeatable. So the results are the same across all environments. Does not matter. Doesn't require anything external. Self-validating. True or false test results. That's it. Nothing else. There's no in-betweens. There's no kind of fails. Timely. Tests are written before coding. Like I said, I treat that one a little bit more malleably. I would rather sometimes write the code and then immediately write the test. But your mileage may vary on that one. And lastly, we have thorough. So make sure to measure your testing success with use cases and not with lines covered. Lines covered means nothing. All right. I hope that you all learned a little bit of something about testing and why testing is super important. And maybe you can put some of this to use in making sure that you're writing tests that actually work for you. You don't have to spend tons of time writing tests. Um, they should be quick. They should be thorough. But thorough doesn't mean checking every single line. So, anyways, have a good day.